Alexandra could only ask why, over and over and over. Had her faith not been strong enough? Had she not been generous enough? Kind enough? What had she done to deserve this? What hadn't she done? She had thought herself to be a genuinely good person, though she made no pretense of having led a virtuous life. She cursed often and spoke the name of the Lord in vain, but a whole generation of teenagers had done that alongside her. She certainly strove not to get any work done on the Sabbath, but this didn't have nearly as much to do with keeping it holy as it did with being lazy over the weekend. She'd stolen when she was a child, but it was either that or starved to death. She coveted plenty, too, back then. Who in the world could blame her? I don't deserve this. And the deadly sins? What were they but human nature? Who hadn't ever been angry or wanted more than what they had? Who could resist indulging in a big meal now and then after counting calories day after day? Her pride was an adequate fit to her accomplishments. Sloth was sanctioned over the weekend, and even then she'd remain active more often than not. Envy was a thing of the past. And lust, well, husband and wife are entitled to certain things, are they not? Lust was backed by love. She wouldn't have it any other way. All you do is make excuses. Did you feel entitled to heaven? Perhaps pride is your folly. She had hated a few times. She'd imagined doing certain less than friendly things to a few people, but she'd never acted on it. Had she been judged on her every single thought and desire? Even if that were the case, the good would surely outweigh the bad. Wouldn't it? The Lord works in mysterious ways. Maybe this is the way it must be. Who are you to say? Hadn't there been enough suffering already? Her childhood had been nothing but misery. Even after all the years of normal life, after the promotions, the diplomas, the hard work, the hours and hours of therapy, after learning to trust, to love, to be loved, still she cringed at the thought of Kibera. She had wanted to see it all burn back then, the slums, its people, and all of Nairobi with it. The hatred had persisted long after becoming part of the Sanders family. She had never been able to truly forgive, but she had honestly tried. Is this the justice I deserve? Eternal torment? It isn't a month or a year. It isn't 1,000 years. It's eternity. Eternity. Am I a monster beyond redemption? Was it not going to church? She prayed every night at the quiet of her bedside and meant every word. She used to go, but service had grown so tainted by rote, so mired in politics and posturing. Worship was a personal thing for her, a quiet, peaceful thing. How much deeper could faith go? I didn't just pretend my way through life so I could get into heaven. I was truthful and honest, and I always tried to do the right thing, even when it hurt. I am a good person. Was this a test? Yes, the final trial that would reveal what truly lay at the bottom of her soul, that would stir every doubt and question every conviction. Her lips curled in distaste at the thought. Was her soul not laid bare at the moment of her death? Was she to be judged not by her deeds in life, but by her resilience after it? Life was the test. Apparently, she had flunked. I've done nothing to deserve this. I don't belong here. Her fist clenched, a fistful of gravel digging into her skin. Her shoulders trembled. Her jaws tightened. It isn't fair. A whole life pouring her face on an entity she thought benevolent, fair and loving. Was there love to be found in this judgment? Was there righteousness in this punishment? Alexandra sneered bitterly. What would Aaron say now? Aaron. It was like a bolt of lightning piercing through her mind. Her adoring husband, her beloved husband, her charming, goofy, annoying atheist of a husband. Oh, Aaron. A wave of anxiety overtook the storm gathering within her. If she had ended up in this place for no good reason that she could imagine, what sort of torment was in store for Aaron, an adamant non-believer? She dreaded the thought in life, though he would always dismiss it with an infuriating chuckle. A just and benevolent God wouldn't punish a nice guy like me, he'd say with an exaggerated smile. She'd tell him that it wasn't so simple, and he'd get frustrated with his nonchalance and drop the issue before he went into off-limits territory. She'd tell herself that there was no sense in worrying about things she couldn't change, even when it was hard to resist the urge to try. But that was then, when the din of everyday life drowned out distant concerns, and death was something that happened to other people. The image of her sweet, harmless Aaron being tortured until the end of time had become every bit as real as the slime covering her hands and staining her clothes. It was as nauseating as the pungent stench of death surrounding her. He wound up in hell too. Her eyes flew open. Aaron is here. She stumbled to her feet. If she could find him, if there was the slightest chance, then what? What could you possibly do if you find him, other than watch him suffer? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Do you really think that you have any choice at all? There is no hope. You might as well lie down and wait for the demons to take you. She shook her head violently, irritated by her own bleak thoughts. They would have to work for it, damn it all. What was left for her to lose? Everything that mattered to her had been taken away in an instant, without so much as an explanation, a justification that would at least tell her why. The tempest swarmed once more, turbulent, ominous. I refuse to go quietly, she whispered to whoever might be listening. She cast a quick glance at her surroundings. She was vaguely aware that hell would be infinitely vast. There would probably be different levels or dimensions or circles or whichever bizarre structure it happened to have. So far she'd only suffered hideous monsters and a splitting headache, but there was no telling what she would find around the corner, the horrors that would surely find her wherever she tried to hide. The notion was enough to make her defiance waver. What hope could a lone wandering soul possibly harbor? Noises emerged somewhere behind her just then. She became deathly still, trying to listen over the deafening thumps of her heart. Feet dragging on gravel. Muffled alien voices. They were getting closer. Panic-struck, Alexandra looked in the opposite direction, into the unknown. She took off running as fast as her legs could take her. Countless pillars flashed past her as she ran, hues of blue overlapping one another in a blur. Alexandra's bare feet painfully pounded on the gravel in a maddened sprint. She'd been running for several minutes. The perfectly straight hallway seemed to go on forever. What would happen once she reached the end? Did she intend to wander aimlessly, hoping for the best? She slowed slightly. You need a plan. Doesn't even need to be a good one. The questions lining up in her head became harder and harder to fathom. Where in hell would Aaron be? How could she get there when she didn't know where she was or where she was going? Was it possible to travel where she needed to go? What could she do once she got there? What if all this was but a cosmic blunder? What if she wasn't supposed to be there at all? An incompetent afterlife. That's even more depressing. The full-speed run had become a mere trot. What was the point, really? Aaron might not even be there at all. If she hadn't ended up where she'd expected to go, why would he be any different? Her jaw set in an almost painful clench. It didn't matter. She would find him anyway, wherever she was, however long it took. She would give anything, do anything, just to see his face once more, to find comfort in his embrace. And that's all it is, right? Steadfast devotion and undying love. 1 hour and already you miss him so. Such a righteous cause that drives you. Her scowl deepened. No, of course that wasn't all. She could hardly ignore the swelling storm at the pit of her stomach, twisting and surging in unison with her heartbeat, washing her insides with the bile of resentment. She couldn't take a single step without feeling its poisonous influence. She came to a halt at last, and winced in pain as the sharp rock fragments dug mercilessly into the soles of her feet. Panting, she leaned against a pillar and gingerly lifted her right foot to take a look at it. She was not surprised at the mess of cuts and scrapes. She would have used her fingertips to carefully feel around them and try to soothe them somehow, but her hands were still covered in filth. They didn't look like serious wounds, but that didn't stop them from being terribly painful. Eyeing her feet with worry, Alexandra wished she hadn't spent all those hours scrubbing at them, trying to get rid of the layers upon layers of calluses and rough edges she'd earned over her less fortunate years. There was a time where she'd been able to walk on glass shards as if they were feathers. She gritted her teeth as she put the foot down. "Stop being a baby. Bloody feet are the least of your worries right now." Wait. Her feet were bleeding. She looked at the ground she was standing on. Ah, crap. She turned around and saw a trail of bloody smudges leading directly to her position. They were patently noticeable for as far as her eyes could see. "I can't even hide my sorry ass without having an arrow pointed at me the whole time." She had to dig her nails into the flesh of her palms to push down the frustrated scream in her throat. She wanted to throw a fit, hiss and scream and flail her arms until all her energy was spent. Can't run forever. Can't hide at all. I have to find out where I need to go. There was only one source of information that she could think of. Alexandra took off running again, her jaw clenched with grim resolve. She did her best to ignore the sharp stabs of pain that came with every stride, and tried to find comfort in the fact that at least this time she knew where she was going. All she had to do was follow the trail of blood that her own feet had left behind.